the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night creator convos. I'm Noelle Marshall, and along with my husband.
Hi, I'm Bob Warner, and thank you all for being here. Kelvin, thank you so much for bringing Sharon into our Co-Creators Convergence Circle this evening. We're looking forward to it.
So we see a lot of new faces here tonight. So what we'd like to do is just take the first minute and a half, tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. Then we're going to toss it back to our friend Kelvin Chin, who's been our guest here many times. I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Noelle and Bob. Great to be with you guys here again, as usual. My name's Kelvin Chin. I'll be hosting along with, obviously, Noelle and Bob tonight, but I'll be interviewing my friend Sharon Coyle-Saeed. And I just wanted to say a few words before we launch into our questions and interview with Sharon, a little bit about her. I was joking beforehand. I have her bio here. It's going to take me a half an hour to read the whole thing. No, I'm just kidding. But she's so accomplished. That's the thing. And she has done so much incredible work in this area of death and dying and grieving and helping people for many years now. Sharon Coyle-Saeed is a licensed Masters of Social Work. She's got her MSW from Rutgers School of Social Work, and she's licensed in the state of New Jersey. She has a social work degree with a specialty in health and aging. She's also a bereavement counselor for the hospice families of the Visiting Nurses Association Health Group. It's called short as the VNA Health Group in New Jersey. And she's worked at Caring Hospice in New Jersey and also Robert Wood Johnson Steeplechase Cancer Center, and currently is a therapist at Integrated Care Concepts in Eatontown, New Jersey. Sharon is an advanced grief recovery method specialist, a certified advanced grief counselor, and has been trained in prolonged grief therapy at Columbia University's School of Social Work, and recently completed a thanatology program. For those of you who don't know what thanatology is, it's the study of death from a number of different perspectives. Her approach is holistic, which is, I think, what sets her apart and why we have her, and we're fortunate to have her here with this special group of us this evening. Her approach is holistic. It's strength-based. She takes looks at things from a culturally competent standpoint. She's very trauma sensitive perspective and so forth. She's also a certified functional health coach, grief movement specialist, clinical emotional freedom technique, which is sometimes emotional freedom technique, EFT, people sometimes refer to that as tapping. So she's a practitioner. She's an expert in that. She's trained in CBT at the Beck Institute. She's a certified meditation instructor and a Reiki master. Sharon is a public health advocate recognized internationally by the WEGO, it's all caps, WEGO, all caps, Health Awards, which is a national organization that recognizes people who've done incredibly good work in the field of health. She's CEO and founder of IBD Journeys, which is an online support group which reaches thousands worldwide who are living with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, and other IBD illnesses. In her free time, to the extent that Sharon has free time, she likes to perform in musical theater productions around New Jersey. Sharon will tell us a little bit about that journey. I won't steal her thunder on that, but suffice it to say that she can sing, and she's a very good singer. So why don't we launch, Sharon, kind of from that into a little bit about your journey, your personal journey, just so people know. Sharon has all these professional accolades and degrees and certifications and so forth in death and dying and grieving. At the same time, what I should mention to all of you is that she has an incredible depth of experience in all of those areas personally herself, which she's going to share with us this evening. So Sharon, why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey, especially the beginning, days.
Yeah, like Sound of Music. Let's start at the very beginning. And I guess the beginning would be pre-inflammatory bowel disease, what my life was like before then. And I grew up as a theater kid. At the age of 5, I opened my mouth up to sing, and there was a voice. And subsequently, I kind of was never not in a show since the age of 5, maybe 6. And that was my solace. That was my passion, and that gave me a lot of peace. The other thing that gave me a lot of peace was I grew up in a Catholic schoolgirl, and the church, the very big Catholic church with golden doors, was about a block and away from my house. And next door to it, it was Flint's, is still there, Flint's Funeral Home. And in those days you walk to school, even if it's a block and a half. And I would, walk to school. And then after school, I would actually, I was always a little bit Wednesday Adamish, go into the funeral parlor and really, kneel down and pray over, especially over the wakes of people that didn't have anyone there. I know I was a little bit of a strange kid, but I was a really passionate. So I was passionate about the theater, and I was passionate about God, and those were like my 2 big things. Kind of still are. And then 1990 happened, and I got really, really sick, and I thought it was an intestinal virus because that's what my general practitioner told me it was. And it was an intestinal virus that never went away. So it wasn't an intestinal virus. It was actually ulcerative colitis. That is, under the umbrella of inflammatory bowel disease, not to be confused with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And inflammatory bowel disease is ulcerative colitis, which is in the large intestine, and Crohn's disease, which can be from the mouth to the anus. And it was rough. It was rough. It was completely pancolitis, and it changed my life. I couldn't do theater anymore. Couldn't go out with friends. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't leave the house, and then I couldn't leave the bathroom. And I would take my pillow and the comforter, and I would sleep on a very small 1960s-ish, little bathroom floor. And then that's where I would go. And in those years, though, and I have to really thank my dad for this, because he was on his own journey, I started to read a lot. And that was probably my first, I call it more the self-helpy, psychological journey of just seeking, of trying to feel better, and I kind of got bored with reading shampoo and conditioner bottles. So the first book, was M. Scott Peck, and it starts out with, the road less traveled. Life is difficult. And once we can accept that life is difficult, then life is no longer difficult because we don't expect it to be easy. And then he had, Louise Hay there, You Can Heal Your Life, Gerald Jampolsky, all the greats. All the old greats, Barbara DeAngelis, Marianne Williamson, Dr. Dwyer. So I was reading all of this and trying to feel better, but I didn't feel better. I had to go actually into major emergency surgery in New York City in 1992. And that's kind of where my next step of my journey led me to.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, what a story.
And yeah, and there's more.
Yeah, what happened at the church? There was a church part of the story. I remember you've told me this in the past.
Oh
I
yeah,
want you to
yeah.
share
So
that with the
thank
people.
you. So of course there was this teen girl, and I was actually, I was the youngest of three girls, but my parents, that's okay. Maureen and Colleen know this. My parents, called me the good child because I, it's get into trouble and stuff like that. But in the Catholic religion, you go down. I was like, walking down. I was so sick too, with my Bible, my leather-bound black Bible in hand, and because I had to go to confession, So the night before surgery, my mom was like, "Okay, let's pack. We got to go for emergency surgery the next morning." And it's a really beautiful church, it has these big gold doors, and here I am walking up. I'm like, I gotta go to confession, I need God.
How old were you then, Sharon? About how old?
Gosh, I think 17.
Teenager.
I'm pretty sure 17.
Teen.
Yeah. So like, and the doors weren't open, and I'm like, oh wow. And I go around to the side door, wasn't open, and I'm like, oh wow. So I go to the rectory, and those who have not grown up in the Catholic religion, that's where the priests, the nuns, they live. It didn't dawn on me that, because I wasn't thinking correctly, I was really sick, that perhaps they were eating or not there. It was kind of like 5, 6 p.m. and ding dong, no one's answering. So I was just so upset because I was like, this is the time where I really needed you, and you abandoned me. And, I was real emotional. And so my mom's like, are you ready? We have to go. And I was like, I left my Bible, on my bookshelf, on the top of my bookshelf. And I didn't take it with me to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. And so I went into surgery, and honestly, I was asking my mom yesterday, like, when was the surgery? Because I knew it was in 1992, but I didn't know when. And it's really surreal and eerie because it was in the beginning of April, very close to, today, right, in a few weeks. And so after surgery, I remember waking up in the recovery room really briefly, and I was shivering. And mind you, I've never had anything, like that before. And I was going in very poor health. I had a tube down my mouth, up my nose, all these, things. And I just opened my eyes very briefly, and I was shivering, because, now I know, I'm like, oh yeah, operation rooms are really cold. But I didn't know that then, so I'm like shivering, and I'm like, oh my God, they lied to me. Hell is not hot. It's freezing. It's like an iceberg, like the Titanic, And then I went under, and then I could hear, like voices around me. She's into the woods. We don't know. When is she going to come out? This, that. And I'm like, why is everyone talking about me like I'm not here? And then I had this experience of hearing my heartbeat, dong, 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 and then like seeing my red blood cells, and that, I wasn't a science major or anything. I was a theater girl. And then I had this whoosh of like going out and up through the Mount Sinai, room, through the whole building, through the whole hospital building. This was my first time there, right? But I could, see, okay, this was the building, this was on top. And then there, and I was very close, no man could ever take his place. It's my grandfather who passed away in the 80s, way too young. Yeah, and he was my favorite. And I was his favorite. And so I go there, wherever there was, and it was like this beautiful, the whole 9 yards, the white fluffy cloud thing. And the most significant thing to me was it was just the perfect temperature. It wasn't like too hot, it wasn't too cold, and it was just so pleasant. And I was just like, oh, I want to stay here. And then this man who had his back to me, and then I, no fear either. I was just walking to him, and then he turned around, and it was my grandfather. And I just grasped onto him, and I was like, I don't think any words were said at that point. And then I said, I want to stay. And he said, no, it's not your time. You can't, you have to go back. And I said, please don't let me go back there. I don't want to go back there. And it was like as slow as a process going up, it was like that coming back. And I have to show you my grandfather too, because I love him so very much.
He's a good looking guy.
Thank you. And
you were right back in the room. Is that right? So you're saying you were right?
I was right back in the room, and no, it's like no time has gone by, and you know, you're calling for the little push button bell for the nurse. I'm like, okay, here I am back up. I was in a room, in a private room, medical ICU room, that it was called. I didn't even know these kind of things then, but now I know it's medical ICU room. And you know, this nurse came in, Aneta, and she just looked at me, and I was like, can I get like a toothbrush, and because my mouth was so dry, and you know, something to wash my face. And she's like, Holy Mother of God. And she left, and I'm like, okay, that was weird. Like, can I get a toothbrush, you know, in the pink bucket to wash myself? And then my surgeon came in, Dr. Slater, and man of very little words, but brilliant surgeon. And he came in and he looked at me and he goes, and he left. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little freaky, you know? And then my mom came in and she was lighting candles at St. Patrick's Cathedral, because Mount Sinai is on the upper side. And she came in and she's like, oh my God. And she was like coming up to me, and I'm like, what's going on? She's like, you were in a medical coma for a week. We thought we lost you. The doctors were saying you were in the woods. Your blood counts were so low. And I was just lighting candles for you. And I said, oh my God, well, I just met Grandpa, you know, and I had this experience. It was 1992. Okay. Keep that in mind. And she said, oh, that's sweet, honey. Don't tell anyone about that. Okay. So they're going to think, you know, the white straitjacket's coming. So I never really talked about it until about, I would say, like 5 years ago, when I told the story on my Facebook line. But it's really interesting because now, and I think I read on your story, Kelvin, of the Business Insider magazine or newspaper, right?
Right, much more acceptable.
It's more talked about now.
Yeah, the Business Insider article, I don't know if people have seen that, but it's on my Facebook. You can find it on my Facebook page. Or you can just Google Business Insider and type in near-death experiences and Business Insider, and it'll pop up in your Google. And it just came out like 2-3 days ago or something like that.
I know.
And they talked, you know, Business Insider, for those people who don't know, it's a very global, very well accepted, not a spiritually oriented journal. It's just for business and sports and entertainment and everything. And so they published a very long article about near-death experiences. So it seems like maybe starting to move a little bit more towards mainstream than at least people talking about it, compared to 1952, like you said, where your mom says, don't tell anybody.
Don't talk about that.
Don't talk about that. People think you're a little bit crazy. But yeah. Grandpa visit.
And it is refreshing to talk about it, you know, because it makes you feel like validated that others have had that experience, you know. But where was I at with, you know, that faith? Well, I realized I didn't have to go into a place, you know what I mean? I realized that, you know, my life was saved, you know, my life was saved for a reason, and I'm going to serve him, her, universe, you know, I say him. And I just started searching, and I just started like reading, like just as I was reading all the other material that I was talking about, I couldn't get enough. So I just started, you know, reading and rereading through the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, you know, Shintoism, Taoism, Buddhism. I couldn't get enough. You know, I just wanted to understand more, you know, understand more. How can I serve him more? You know, it was in every language. And I'm really going to mess this up, but I'm paraphrasing. And I'm pretty sure it was, I don't know who said it, but it was someone who said it. I don't know if it was Ruby or Buddha or something, but it was like, you know, whether, you know, I can find God in a temple, you know, in church, in a mosque, in, you know, in any different language. So I became like that. And then I started to feel really good. You know, I was cured. You know, I was starting to feel really good. And so I was living life. I was living life, I was starting to do theater again. And I worked, and I was a retail manager, no, well, I'll say it, of Ann Taylor and BB and The Limited, and a human resource manager. And then I was operating my own store, and I got really materialistic. I'll just say it like that. I was living at home and I was spending a lot of money. So, I would go into Short Hills, is a very hi-fi place, in New Jersey. And I would go in and say, oh, I like that. All right, I'll get that, and I think I lost my way a little bit, and
This was this before or after Rutgers? Undergrad?
That was during.
During.
That was during. Yeah, that was during. I was a journalism major. And so I was doing all of that. I always have my hands in a lot of things all at one time. It's just my nature. So I was working, going to school, and doing these things. And then I met the man I was going to marry in school. And we married, we had 2 kids. And then I, gave up my job, became a stay-at-home mom. But of course, I couldn't just stay at home. So I started to become a class mom, and then do the whole PTA, treasurer, ran a whole, extravaganza show for these kids, raised money. And then June 11th, 2011 happened. And I call it, because people think, oh, that was the dark night of your soul, right? In 1992. And I'm like, it came in 2011. 2011, I went back to Mount Sinai, and I had to get these, look it up, peritoneal inclusion cysts out, because they were wreaking havoc with my insides. And it was supposed to be, an in and out surgery. And my IBD Journeys members, it's in and out surgery. It's never in and out surgery, and this was pretty bad. And so I was in and out. And then all of a sudden that night, I just got really, really sick. And I was back in that same medical ICU room in 1992. I just realized that right now. And it was really strange. And so that was June. And I didn't come home from Mount Sinai Hospital until end of September. It was pretty crazy. I had 2 other surgeries. I had, a neckline with TPN going in there. And it's almost like if you don't hear the knock, or at least this is how I, have met with life. If you don't hear that knock, the first time, and hello, your life purpose, it's going to be like, I got it. I got the knock. I got the banging now. You're banging down my door. I got it, universe. I hear you. So 2011 through beginning of 2018, I lost count, of the surgeries. And when I say surgeries, 10-inch open abdominal surgeries going back in, because I have so many adhesions. That was one of the biggest problems, that I wasn't a laparoscopic candidate. Not that that's any fun. I spent
just quick for those people who don't know what an adhesion is. It's when it's basically scar
tissue.
And so it creates problems. The extra scar.
A lot of problems. It was it was causing intermittent small bowel obstructions, and still do to this day.
Right.
But in those days there were a lot of them.
Continue.
I was from 2011 to beginning of 2018. So 2011, 6/11/11 sounds so ominous, right? To I would say March, April-ish 2018. I was in the hospital, whether in a New York City hospital or my local hospital, JFK in Edison, New Jersey, 50 to, I hate to say it, but my mom has kept every single record, which sometimes it's so traumatizing, I don't want to see, but I like to say 50%, but if I really count, 50 to 60% of the time each year in the hospital. So that means I was home only 40% of the time. And when I was home, I had a IV pole, I had a PIC line, and then had a port, with TPN. TPN is total parenteral nutrition, because I couldn't eat, I was throwing up, and then I had a J tube, in my stomach. It was pretty bad. And I was just surgery after surgery after surgery. It was really horrible. And my whole life just, it was just so around in 2011, this is really important actually. In 2012, I met in Mount Sinai a roommate who changed my life because I became a selective mute, if you can imagine, because I'm talking so much. So I was like,
you weren't talking. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't talk. I
You
didn't
didn't
talk
Yeah.
at all. So when I was in the hospital, I would pull the curtains around me. And this one selective mute. Yep. Noelle. And then this roommate, she was just pulling back the curtain and pulling back the curtain and wanting to talk to me. And she was about my age. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get my room changed. Like, this girl's really annoying me, but she kept on talking like, who are you? Da, da, da. And I have Crohn's and, I'm here for an obstruction and yada, yada, really yada, yada. Right. But then I went down for this really big test, and it takes all day, like I don't know, a small bowel series test. And when I came back, Amy was not there anymore. She left me her number. I called her because I finally felt like I wasn't alone in my journey.
You can take a moment.
Yeah, that was August 2012, and we were inseparable. We were never not on the phone. She became like my best friend, my sister in IBD. Yeah. And then in December 25th, 2012, Amy went into surgery, bowel surgery, and she never came out. So I wrote on her legacy online that I would start IBD Journeys, which is just a labor of love. It's a Facebook group for those with inflammatory bowel disease to ensure that no one has to go through it alone. Because she made me not feel so alone in my disease, she brought back my voice. And I wanted others to also feel not so alone in their disease. And that's really huge. So thank you for letting me talk about Amy Blue Meamer-Hart, because I owe a lot to her. Now IBD Journeys has thousands of members worldwide and reaches so many different people.
So thanks to
Amy. That means a lot.
Thanks to Amy through you, huh?
I really don't know where I would be without her. Yeah.
She really, it sounds like she really opened you up in a different way when you were in this selective mute stage. You had just gone, you kind of shut down, it sounds like, huh? And she opened you up to something that would open you up even more by helping other people open up and talk about their IBD journey, as you call it.
Now that I'm talking to you, when you say opened you up, and I never thought of it like this, because I know she definitely was one of those people that, I called her like my rope of hope, but she was, if you were looking at this kind of like a journey, which I was doing in, my recent thanatology class with the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, she was a guide. She was a guide on my own journey. She was a guide, and subsequently she's guiding others. That's her thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you.
I just opened up the group. That's her. That's all her. But then I got sick of like getting my guts ripped open. So I said, you know what? I think I'm going to write a blog of a year in wellness. I'm going to try everything, just like everything, Ayurvedic, this, that. I had oil poured on my, forehead. That didn't work. I was in a sweat box. That was not good. It may be good for others. I got totally dehydrated. I was in the hospital the next day. But then, I did Reiki. I had Reiki performed on me. And little by little, it was like etching, like a little rock, and it was like, ooh, that kind of felt kind of good. And I was kind of having a good couple of weeks. Oh, now the bowel obstruction. Oh, but then I had a good couple of weeks. So it was just like, I was just trying everything. And then it got really expensive. So I said, you know what? I think I need to be certified in these things so I could do the Reiki and the tapping and the stuff on myself. And that's where I started, learning a lot of things. And a lot of
Very,
Huh?
very practical approach towards self-care.
A practical.
It's actually this is a great teaching lesson. Just is everybody catching what she's saying here? It's like people say, well, I can't afford to go. I mean, not that you can, give yourself a full body massage.
I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, but you can't afford to do certain things. You can learn how to do it on yourself. That's great. It's a great teaching lesson.
Yeah. So it was practical. I wanted to save a dime because I'm really good at, to that. And I had a lot of time on my hands. I still had a lot of time on my hands. I was in the hospital half the time. And then I said, you know what? I think, and this was before a major surgery in 2014, I think I'm going to apply to grad school. I think I want to be a social worker. So here I am. I know, the audacity. And by the way, this was a 50-50 chance survival surgery. And I was like, I think I'm going to apply for grad school. I'm going to ask my doctors to write, notes of referrals, and they did. Got my transcripts and I got accepted. And I thought, you know what? If I die in this surgery, I won't know if I didn't get accepted. So and I did. I got the letter of acceptance, and I wanted to go for. You could go 2, 3, 4 years, and because of everything, and I took a gap year. I completed in 2019, and that's kind of where leading up to now. So what happened was during my internships, this is so strange, but during my internships, my first internships was at a cancer center, Robert Wood Johnson Cancer Center, and that was really an incredible experience. And then my second internship was at a hospice. And I just fell in love. I just knew, like, this, death, dying, bereavement, grief, like that was my thing. Like you kind of know when it's your thing. And that felt like home, and had a lot of incredible, experiences with, especially with dementia patients, connections, with them and their loved ones. And then I applied to the VNA from a hospital bed from Indeed.com, and I got it. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this now, God. And that's what I've been doing since November 2019. And it's really interesting because I am a bereavement counselor there, but I have learned so much in the past 2 years from grievers, and I remember
when you're there working with grievers, explain to people what that means. Somebody's lost a loved one and whatever, and then you're there to help support them afterwards. How does that, is that what you're talking about? Is that how that works?
I hope I support, but I think I'm just there to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Your space, your time, your grief, your journey. And sometimes that's really, really hard as a counselor. We want to go in and fix things,
right. So
but there's no fixing. And there's just presence.
These are families that are associated with this VNA organization who've lost.
Yes and no. Mostly, yeah. I would say 90%, yes. But there are community members that came in, especially in 2020, as you can imagine. And the stories were heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, horrible, horrific. I do want to lend time for Q&A because I see some people, in here that have had that experience. So they're the experts, not me.
Yeah, but for the
but
for the people who don't know you and they don't know what a bereavement counselor is, just briefly tell them, people who are here, like what's the role of that person?
Well, I do. I provide bereavement, grief, loss support for families who have lost loved ones, either one-on-ones or groups.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to? I was wondering before we get to the Q&A,
Yes.
if you wanted to share a little bit. Well, I had a couple of questions. In terms of the I know you and I've talked offline, and you showed me this very interesting logo of a new, I don't know, we'll call it a new product.
Well, can I
Sure.
say one thing before that?
Sure,
Because
yeah.
my brain actually, for some reason, it thinks like linear for some reason. So I'm like, wait a second, we can't go there. We didn't go there.
That's
So
okay.
with the bereavement journey, and this was before I did get the job, at Visiting Nurses Association,
Mhm.
but I became an advanced grief recovery specialist, and that actually was a large part of my healing process as well.
Yeah, and
Because
that's how we met. Right. Okay.
yes, and I was grieving, and when I was like, because I'm always like writing, and I'm like, yes, and they're like, put down your pen and paper. This is an experiential. I'm like, I don't need grief recovery, and I needed grief recovery, and I worked on the loss of my healthy self, and it was one of the most game-changing things that has happened to me, along with all the other stuff too. But that was huge. That was huge. So that was big. Yeah. So, well, also part-time, because I just have to suck the juice out of life. I work at a group practice,
Yeah.
integrated care concepts, and that kind of uh, lightens my load a little bit, so to speak. And I carry about a 15 to 20, 5 clients a week, and that's where I do grief work there, but I also do trauma, anxiety, depression, and things like that. So I
That's
also picked
that's
up
your
some tools.
that's
Mhm.
your private therapy practice, just for clarification for people.
It's not my private
Right,
therapy
but it's
practice, but I
through
work
the
with a group
center.
practice.
Yeah, through the
That
center,
is correct.
which
That
is
is correct.
separate from the VNA work. Yeah.
That's correct. So
Okay.
with that, I do more, I do a little bit of everything. I do a lot of listening. I think listening is such a lost art, to be honest with you. But I mean, like, I have a lot of tools, but here's the thing. Have I taken CBT, with, Judith Beck, the father, the daughter of the father of CBT? Yes. Have I taken DBT with Marshall Linehan? Yes. You know what I mean? But it's not about that. It's good to have the tools. You know what I mean? But if you don't have the connection with someone, if someone doesn't feel safe in your presence, then they're not going to trust you. They're not going to open up to you. So I think that the Therapeutic Alliance is actually most beneficial beyond, any tools in your tool belt.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. So,
Right.
so Kelvin, I know where you're going to. So, okay. So and I think I see one of my colleagues here from.
Should we share? Should
so
we? Why don't
yeah,
you?
but
Why don't you
one second.
describe it?
One
You
second.
describe it. You describe it, and then Noelle will.
And then you
will
could share the thing.
Noelle will share.
Okay, so yeah. So
You just-
Open Center, if no one knows what Open Center is, it's a
Yeah.
wonderful non-for-profit place that does a lot of awesome trainings, in so many things. I'm really longing to get back there. I took my EFT there with Dawson Church, who's a leader, in EFT world, EFTuniverse.com. And so I took this like 6-month thanatology study of dying, death and dying program, and with Jan Booth and a whole bunch of other incredible people in the field. And it just really was like, ooh, I really I'm really motivated to do something, in this capacity. So the thing I'm launching soon is the Death Positive podcast. I could share that little image.
You want to share
And
that?
so coming soon to
Share
a theater near you.
Share the logo. Yeah.
So you see the little I guess death guy, but he's smiling and he has a thumbs up, and I cannot take credit for the thumbs up because that was all Jeff. And he's wonderful. He does a lot of film and editing at Hofstra. So anyway, I'm really excited about that. And Death Positive, I don't preach into the choir here, but it's you take the fear out of the death, and how we do that is we start talking about it. Let's talk about our fears. Let's talk about, all those other things. But that's about it. That's about all I'm doing right now.
That's about it.
Pretty much.
As if you have a 25th hour in your day.
Oh, and by the way, and the thing I'm taking this weekend, and she's really incredible, Dr. Jo Cacciatore. She's wonderful. She's from the MISS Foundation on MISS. I know she was just recently on Oprah, and she's good stuff. She's good stuff. So that's a 4-day thing, but it's intensive. I thought it ended at 7 p.m. EST, but it ended at 8. So please excuse me for being 3 minutes late.
You're right on time.
But I would love to have any Q&As. That would be great, because I really, I'm a person who kind of likes to hear from everyone else. And if people could turn on their cameras, because I really like seeing others too.
You can turn the cameras on now, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to allow them to open their cameras now. So,
oh, by the way, and thank you so much, Noelle. Thank you, Noelle, for asking me to be on here, and Bob, thank you so much.
Well, when Kelvin recommends somebody, you go like, yeah, I got to go with that. Got to go with them. I'm sorry. So it's been a delight to hear your story, and I just pretty blown away. But I want to ask, my first question is, are you 100 years old or 200 years old?
In this lifetime or the previous ones? I'm a turtle. Finding Nemo.
Because everything
thousands
you have done is just amazing. So we're going to do this. More people. Bob, are you asking folks to turn on their cameras? Please join in this conversation. Someone has shared from a very, very deep place.
Kathleen, feel free to unmute. She's my thanatology colleague there. She's wonderful.
Very cool.
Good stuff.
Wonderful. So if you do want to have a comment, you can use the reaction button and raise your hand, hit reaction and raise hand, or you can just wave at us, or you can put something in the chat. So I'll go with another question. You said you had 2 children, and with the amount of hospitalization and a husband, how did all that work? I mean, that the family dynamic must have been such a something very difficult to deal with.
My mom lives 5 minutes away, and honestly, I couldn't have done it without her. I couldn't have even done, the grad school without her. And also neighborhood, because, my husband had work. So we need insurance, but even neighbors really came through to the PTA moms. I'm really grateful. It does take a village. And also they, at one time I felt like really guilt and shame and sadness, oh my gosh, they were 5 and 8 at the time, and you do the math of, where their journey was, and they had to come to the hospital. They did homework in the hospital. They celebrated birthdays in the hospital, all that stuff. But they're really, I'm not just saying this because of my kids, they're really good kids. And my eldest son wants to, he's pre-med, and he works as a one-on-one patient monitor at Robert Wood Johnson. And my youngest actually may want also to find a cure, so
wow,
that's their journeys, that's their journeys.
Wow.
Peg, oh, is that direct to me? Much better, Peg. I adore you. Thank you.
You could just unmute yourself and jump in the conversation.
Hi, Brian.
Right.
Looks like someone's trying to. Peg, are you trying to unmute yourself? There you go.
Asked to unmute. I just did.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a participant on a couple of the things that Sharon, and she was on, was it Tuesday? And somebody else was actually doing the talking because she'd had some oral surgery. So that's a way to keep her from talking.
There you go.
My mother used to say I was injected with a phonograph needle, way back when. The younger generation doesn't understand phonograph needle.
Yes. Doing much better though. Thank you.
That's good. That's real good.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sean, with you, you don't necessarily have to share the whole experience if you don't want to, but would you share what your comment was for the recording?
I won't share it's way too long. But thank you for all you're doing, because it was actually that which I suffered for many, many years as well. And then it caused a hernia to strangulate, which is what kept me in Hawaii, and was, so I just empathize with everything that you were saying about spending all the time sleeping on the bathroom floor. I think I spent years doing that. So.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, what did you
IBD.
have, Sean?
IBD, which I had for many years, but then it got worse and caused I got an abdominal hernia that then it made worse and made strangulate. And but it forced me to stay in Hawaii. So now I've been here 20 years. So
yeah.
But I still
How are
deal
you
with
feeling
that.
now?
I still deal with it. I've been in the hospital during COVID 3 times on the NG tube and from that scar tissue stuff. And I have to have another surgery as well. But that's amazing for all that you're doing. And thank you for sharing.
Keep in connect. Keep in connect.
Yeah, sure.
Come on to IBD Journeys.
I just joined your group.
Great.
Yeah, I did. I joined it.
Yeah,
The
Sean.
nasogastric tubes are really interesting.
Yeah, it's an NG.
My doctor lets me take it out by myself now.
Yeah, I've gotten to be quite a pro at those.
Yeah, for those people who don't know what they're talking about, an NG tube is it's short for nasogastric tube, and it's a tube that goes down your nose into your stomach, basically. Right, it's going down. It's a plastic tube that holds us down. So they're kind of joking around about it, but those of you who've never had that done before, it's and I've never had it done, but I can only imagine. But Sean is head of the IONS group in Hawaii, the International Association for Near-Death Studies in Hawaii. So we're connecting a lot of people here together with Bob and Noel and Sean.
Great.
I call that NG tube the roto-rooter, because it clears your sinuses out as well as everything else.
You know what's so interesting? I was going to say that as well, because Kelvin's like, if anyone had that, but when you're in so much pain, and your stomach looks like you're 6 months pregnant. Not that you would know that, Sean, but that's how you would feel.
No, I know about
pregnant.
Yeah.
And when someone puts a nasogastric tube in, it decompresses your bowel, so it actually makes you feel better.
Feel better, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the hole in the spout of the tea kettle, so to speak. It's the analogy, right?
Yeah.
It relieves the pressure. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Max put something. Max, you unmute yourself. You put something in the chat, and you're welcome to unmute yourself. And
come on, Max, unmute yourself. Don't let me
I can read it, but you may want to say it.
You want to read that, Max?
Yeah, it's actually from my girlfriend Mindy, and I'm actually a social worker just starting out also. So we come from I have the same question too. I am wondering if you have any advice for counselors, therapists who are just starting out.
Great question.
We're just starting out. Be open to making mistakes. Go gentle with yourself. And if you lead in your sessions, okay, with love rather than fear, then even if you do make mistakes, that will be felt. You just apologize, and the most important thing is that therapeutic alliance. Don't underestimate that. Fill your toolkit, fill your toolkit. You don't have to go crazy like I did, but fill your toolkit, And always remember what brought you to it. Because those days where it gets a little bit like, oh my God, why did I do this? Not making too much money. And you go back to why your heart was in it in the first place. And that really brings you back to the passion, you know.
Great
I
advice.
hope that helps.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Very thoughtful. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
And get your own therapist. You
That's
know, when I have a client and I'll say, do you have anything other questions for me? And then I'll say, well, you didn't ask me if I was in therapy. Well, I thought you were like, you know, all together. And I have a weekly therapist. Well, you don't want me to put my stuff on you, do you? So I have to still keep doing the work. Still keep doing the work on yourself, you know.
Exactly. What you don't
Works in
want is,
progress always.
what you don't want is a therapist going to a therapist as a client and having you be the therapist for the therapist. That's therapist.
Yes,
Right?
right.
Seriously.
Right. Because it's really about what's going on with you. You know, why am I asking this question? You know, do I need to ask this question? Do I just allow the what that person just said made me feel uncomfortable? That's something within me. That's not something within them.
Right.
You know, I just read in this Miss Foundation thing. It always sounds like a Miss America contest or something. Miss Foundation, that it was a study, and it was a really cool study that can I just look at it for a second? Because I don't want to misquote it. I'm not going to go to the
That's
whole
fine.
study, but it was really incredible. So I really want to share this. It was that when therapists, all right, I'll give you the gist of it. When therapists got meditation, they did a little study. When therapists got meditation before meeting the client, overwhelming amount of positive outcomes. Not the client getting meditation, the therapist. That's kind of proof positive to do our own work, because we come from that centeredness, you know.
Right.
We allow the space there. We allow the space. We allow the pause. You know, I want to say that also when you said, Sharon, what do you do as bereavement counselor? I don't do anything. I pause.
Yeah.
I go like this. And that's sometimes the hardest thing, right? So when we can just, as a bereavement counselor, when I allow the pause, and when someone, you know, we go around the room and I do a lot of groups, and when someone's like, da 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 da, and then all of a sudden they stop, and I wait a little bit, and then I wait a little bit more, and then sometimes it's like, okay, I'm done. But if I wait a little bit more, and then then the tears come, you know, because they're just processing. That's where you know what I mean, where that other stuff. Kathleen, what do you think of there? I have to know, because I adore your smile right now. And by the way, Kathleen has such words of wisdom. She's wonderful. My colleague in the alumni. You're on pause.
I'm working.
There you go.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Yes, Sharon and I attended this thanatology course together, and I come from a different background. As first of all, I was a body worker in open heart surgery with Dr. Oz, but then I moved into chaplaincy. And as with social work, my job as a chaplain is to keep the mouth shut and the ears open. And as a Benedictine once said to me, you listen with the ears of your heart. And to have the space, as you described, learn to be comfortable in the space of silence or emptiness, because it then provides the comfort to move that person into expression, which would be the sixth chakra, the expression, profession, confession. And that is where the therapy and the healing can move outward. This is your time, Sharon. But
No,
thank
Kathleen,
you for
tell us
giving
that
me
again. Can you tell us that again? Expression,
the
profession,
sixth
confession.
chakra at the throat. Expression, profession, confession.
Beautiful.
So I can profess what I am feeling. I can confess what I am feeling. I can express it. And in the work of Carolyn Mice, The Anatomy of Healing, she parallels that to different religious things, and in the Catholic Church to the sacrament of confession. And that is for your healing. But that is mostly, I think, what people need, the opportunity to be able to say it. And you as social worker or as chaplain or whatever are the ones who ground the space. Keep it open, keep it clear so those people can say what they need to say. And there's probably a lot more that could be said in terms of all of the issues with the bowels and chakras. Yeah, but
Yes,
we're not going there.
Well, my
I've taken
sacral
time.
chakra. Well, I need some body
So,
work on that. But
thank you.
Kathleen, no, thank you. Because what you're reminding me of is, okay, what's it all about, Alfie? All this stuff, all this journey, what's it all about? And I know that Jan Booth, our teacher in
Right.
class, it's allowed that space to be comfortable. And I'm not comfortable. I don't want to see other people suffering, but being comfortable with sitting with it. Grievers are not broken. They don't need to be fixed, but they need to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yes.
And when grievers hear, or not heard, oh my gosh, and I lost my daughter, and then, oh, you should be grateful you have 2 other kids, though. So it's not validating. It's just, you lost your daughter. You can mirror back. You lost your daughter, just say nothing. And just allowing that space. And I think,
You must tell your story. It has to get out. Yes. And even when I do the work with people who have just had babies, as an infant massage therapist, the first thing that I do is let them tell the whole labor and birth story. So, for you, tell me about your surgery. Tell me about your bowels.
yes.
Where are they in your life? How high up on the totem pole are they?
Yes.
I'm going
I
on
adore you,
mute because I've
Kathleen.
been going too much.
See, she's like, ooh, she's getting me right in the feels. That's great. And Peg
Thank you.
and Peg, it is, in one of the groups, and she said, people say, just when are you going to get over it? Another griever just called me the other day, and she said, it's been 4 months. I went to church and someone said, you're still grieving? I went to a David Kessler. He's high up there too in the grief world. And people ask, how long will I grieve for? How long will your beloved one be gone for? There's no magic pill in it. There's no magic wand.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, that piece that I wrote in terms of that my friend George's, who's lost his son 7 years earlier, who were still saying that to him. His partners at the law firm was still saying that, and which really upset me enough to write that piece that I wrote about it. So yeah, there is no.
Hold on to your hats. There's stuff coming up. Go into the New York Times article in the new DSM that they're trying to get, and I think they're succeeding, of a prolonged grief disorder. So now grief is going to be pathologized. You're still grieving a year? Okay, let's get you with an ICD-10 code. Bam.
Problematic.
What about the one who you just mentioned, whose grief is 7 years and beyond? Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
They're
about
really
that
going to need,
code,
some, uh-huh,
about the ICD code,
yes.
do they do that so that, I mean, this is all part of the game, uh, so that then the people can get treatment and it can be billed through their insurance?
Sure. And here's the thing though, and I had the exact same question because I was like, oh, what people use their insurance for a $30 copay, or sometimes people are charging $200. She was talking about a code, and I wrote it down. I think it's a V code, but I don't want to say the wrong code. She's talking about a code where, it would say like a grief, a bereavement. But here's the thing, sometimes even people in the grieving, have some sadness, have some, anxiety, or maybe have been, trauma surrounding the grief experience. There are lighter codes, F4, F4322, F4323, adjustment disorders, with anxiety adjustment, which is not like saying, wow, you're a generalized anxiety disorder. You're major. These are hardcore codes that stay in people's charts. That's pathologizing grief. All right. And here's the interesting thing. What if I went to a general practitioner, okay, and forget about general practitioner. I went to a gastroenterologist, and they said, you know what, they're not covering IBD anymore. So you know what I'm going to put down for you? I'm going to put down that you have a hiatal hernia. That's okay, right? That would never be acceptable in a different profession, writing down some other code. You have diabetes, but that's not covered under your insurance. So let me put heart disease down. What?
Part of the game, the broken game.
Yeah. Jeff has his hand up here.
Unmute yourself, Jeff. Welcome. Good to see you.
Okay. You hear me? Okay. I'm sorry, I was a little bit late. And Sharon, I know what you do, and you do very, very good work. And I know we're largely talking about death, and that obviously that involves bereavement, but grief can also involve matters that are other than death. The loss of a job, the end of a relationship, the change, a significant change in someone's life, right? I mean, grief can involve just loss in general. It could be a wider brush.
Exactly. Yeah. Sharon, you want to
Jeff,
speak?
you're 100%.
Speak to that, Sharon.
Right. I don't mean to. Death is obvious, and we'll have different ways of dealing with death. But sometimes it's the other types of grief that can be a little harder to deal with, or maybe not harder, but different to deal with. So
yeah,
I just wanted to get your thoughts on
Thank you. And as you recall, when I said the grief experience that I worked on for the advanced grief recovery was the loss of my healthy self. Right.
I remember. So, I almost typed that in. Actually, the loss of your healthy self. That was a great line.
There are over 40. There are over 42 plus losses that one can have during a lifetime. A death loss is just but one of them. Okay. Divorce, end of relationship, moving. That's usually one of the first ones in someone's childhood. Oh, we're moving, honey. Oh, you mean I have to leave my friends from that school and make new friends? You're going to make new friends. This is going to be good for you. We're doing this for you. We're doing this so you have a better, but where was the, I know, sweetheart, this is so hard for you. I can't even imagine you leaving your friends. Maybe we can work out where we can, visit but acknowledging that child's grief experience, how about pet loss? Sometimes that's very disenfranchised. Marriage, loss of your single self. What? That's supposed to be happy. Graduation, right? Okay, I throw up my cap. I'm a senior, I'm throwing up my cap, and I'm so excited because no more school, and the cap comes down, and what do I do with my life now? Conflicting feelings. Grief is the conflicting feelings that come with an end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. How about the losses that we don't talk about so much? Like loss of sense of safety, loss of sense of trust, betrayal.
Yeah.
Physical abuse, sexual abuse.
I helped somebody who had very, very deep, for decades, loss of an expectation of immigrating to the United States and everything that would mean. And with all his friends from this other country, happened to be Sri Lanka, to the United States, and they went to university, and his friends are all making, not all of them, but they're making high 6 figures and some making 7 figures. And he has felt like a failure, and he's 45, 50 years old now. And so that's a huge loss for him. It's not that he lost money or he lost prestige, in a sense, in his cultural community in Sri Lanka. And they're all in the United States now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an unusual one, because it's not a physical loss of money, but there's all the psycho-emotional loss that goes along with it, and it's loss. Those are huge conflicting feelings.
What about the elephant in the room? What about March 2020? Here we are, March 2022. What the heck just happened the past 2 years? Grief is the conflicting feelings that come with an end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Grab your stuff, go home. You'll be back in a couple of weeks. Ooh, yeah, we get to get out of work. We get to sleep late. And wait a second, I don't like this too much. I'm feeling a little isolated. I'm feeling a little alone. Now, of course, lost a sense of safety with each other. That's a whole different other ball game too. We need a lot of healing. We need a lot of healing. Evolutionary biology. We are safer in groups. That's how tribes came about. We are safer together. If a lion's coming, we are safer together. We can do this together. Herding, gathering, and all these things, right? Safer together in numbers. Wait a second. You're safer separated. What? That just went against thousands, millions of years here. Whoa. Mind blown. Oh, now you can go and be with each other again. Wait a second. I'm having a grief experience. How do I even talk to people again? I got to get out of my house? You mean I have to? Is it okay? Is it safe to touch the shopping carts again? Can I do that with? I don't know. It's mind blowing. Yeah. We are in a very we're in a grieving experience right now.
Oh, huge worldwide.
Not only the death losses, yeah.
Huge worldwide. I think it's more significant than people talk about. It's huge, I think. Yeah.
Do you remember? And I'm so sorry. His grandfather here, but my grandmother had a storage downstairs with the can sales and all the cans and the things of the Great Depression, right? I'm wondering, years to come, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, what are our kids going to do? What are you know what I mean? What are we going to do? Are we ever going to be the same? How are we going to have those residual things? Don't touch that. Get some pure. You have to, wipe the surfaces down. Ooh, someone just, what is it when you go to the bars and these little peanuts, and not that I ever go to a bar, but the little peanuts at the bar, and someone takes it. Lost my appetite with that. Is that okay to do that anymore? We're going to see these things.
Yeah, I think that's true for millennia. We go through lives and things change, and we're forever changed. It's not like.
Oh, Peg said something here. No one got out of the pandemic without loss of something. Absolutely. There was job loss. People are laid off. Oh my goodness. My primary doctor said pandemic accelerated his physical bodies. Peg, can you come off mute for a second and just explain that?
You're still on mute, Peg.
Yeah, she's gonna do it. Yeah, thank you. Wait, Peg, can you?
She's still trying to figure it out. I can see her.
Unmute.
There you go.
There you go.
Muted. Okay.
Perfect.
After my husband's death, I saw the doctor like a week or so later for myself, and he was absolutely, he's a really personable doctor that just doesn't say, oh, you know, you've got a temperature here, take some medicine. He treats you everything. Okay. And he knew my husband in and out of the hospital, the whole 9 yards. And he actually walked over to me and gave me a hug when I showed up after Richard passed. And he said that amongst, and this has been, I've heard this in other places, amongst people with chronic illnesses, the isolation psychologically, you know, you were bad. You know, remember, he even said this to me. When you were naughty, what happened? I remember my mother saying to me, now, young lady, I want you to go in your room and think about what you did wrong or what you said wrong. We were all shoved into isolation. We were afraid of our own friggin' shadows. And my husband's doctor said it hit the people with chronic conditions like heart disease and cancer. It actually accelerated. And he was quoting, you know, other medical journals and studies, and, you know, of, you know, you've got 100 people who are, let's say, 72, and they all have the same thing. And, you know, if you had 100, you maybe have 50 now. And they feel that the pandemic, because 1 minute it was okay to do something and now it's not. Are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? You can't go here. You can't do that. We were prisoners in our mind. And I said to my doctor, I said, I had big plans of things I was going to do here in the house. Did I do anything? I think I slept through the whole thing, to be perfectly honest with you. I didn't do much of anything. You know, the pools were closed. There was no, we live in an adult community that has activities which were, quote, back to normal, unquote, you know. Yeah, you know, and that's a grief. You know, it compounded, you know, the grief, you know, what I'm feeling, because, yeah, you know, so that's, nobody got out of it with a loss of something.
Yes. And Peg, you know, it's interesting because, you know, all of our grief groups were in person. March 2020 or April 2020, I opened up the Zoom groups because, you know, people are kind of like, oh, if we could do this thing online. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm comfortable with online. And grievers asked me, like, you know, so how are we going to grieve in isolation and in COVID 2020? I said, I don't know, I'm going to learn from you. And what I'm learning, maybe I should write an article about this because I've been really usurped in this for 2 years. What I'm learning is from my grievers, we're hearing one of them right now, it's taking longer. So what would be like a year and someone where they would be at the year mark? Not that there's a timeline in grief, okay? That after 2 years, it's kind of like they're just finishing their 1 year because it was so much in isolation. Okay, so let's say, and hopefully you can understand this, let's say if someone is going out now, like, okay, 2 years later, okay, the first time going to that store, the first time going to that senior center without Richard, without going to the church without Richard, I'm saying Richard because that's Peg's loved one, you know, and so she didn't have that experience, you know, early on, right? Churches were online. And so now it's, exposure to that, you know, a couple of years later. So I think that COVID has elongated the grief experience. So, you know, that book, second first, third first. So as third first is almost like first. That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So as always, go gentle with yourself.
Yeah, Noelle, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'm interested in the hospice work that you do. And, you know, how prepared are people for death? You know, one of the members of our group, Co-Creators Convergence, she used to run death cafes where people would come there and they would talk about, you know, yeah, it's going to happen. And I don't know, I never went to one. I'll have to tell you that. But she also wrote a book like this, the 7 things that the dying want you to know before they die. And so I'm just curious. We've been talking about the grievers, maybe are the ones that have survived or been left behind, but about those that are going into that phase, what your experience is, and
Was this Bronnie Ware?
No,
Was it
her name is
Bronnie Ware?
Dr. Karen Wyatt. She was
Oh, okay, got you.
she was
Oh,
MD.
Karen,
I think she spoke at IANS one
yeah,
year.
I've been on Karen's podcast several times. I know Karen. Yeah,
Yeah.
Karen's a medical doctor. She's an MD,
Yeah,
but she
retired.
deals with end of life issues though. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just didn't know whether in your hospice work, that's end of life.
Yes,
You know?
yes. And the question was, well, I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's the person going through it or the bereaved. The question is, truly, are we prepared to die?
Right. And your topic was about meeting death. And I think of hospice as they're in that stage of meeting death. And, how prepared people are. And, are these death cafes, if you have any experience with them? I see Kathleen smiling.
I do
Are
have
they
experience
helpful?
with death cafes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
actually,
curious.
Kathleen and we just went to this really awesome, death from Buddhist view. Andrew Halsick, who's just wonderful and delicious. And are we prepared? If we're not, we start better, we better start getting on being prepared, because the prognostication is that we are all going to die. We are all going to die. Okay. So I guess the broader question is, how prepared are, how many, 24 of us in here, how prepared are we, and other listeners online, how prepared are we to die? And what are the first steps with getting prepared? Well, I guess we can do the practicality point of it, which and I believe Andrew called it a gift, to do this, of generosity, is get your advance directive in place. Okay, because if that's not in place and others are making those decisions, and they feel they made the wrong decisions on a grief end of it, really bad stuff can lead to depression, PTSD, anxiety, guilt, shame, in all at all.
Let me just jump in while you're.
I think, yeah, and here's the thing with the and what I'm thinking here is, we need to change as a society. I hope we need. I hate those words, right? I highly suggest we should change as a society, to getting that talk going and getting the advance directives in place sooner rather than later. The high profile cases which actually, brought the advance directives into place, was it Marie Shivo, Karen Ann Quinlan, girls in their 20s, no advance directives, nothing can happen, right? We're invincible. We're in our 20s and teens. That's where those, so I had a conversation, because it has to start with here, right? It has to start with here, and then it has to start with here. I had a conversation with my kids, 16, 20 years old. When you die, what would you like? Would you like to be buried? Would you like to be cremated? Can I talk to you about what an advance directive is? What a New Jersey Post is? What would you like? Who would you want there? What kind of music would you want? Oh, well, I would want Drake. Okay, let's have Drake, playing in the back or whatever. Having those conversations. And by the way, this can change and adapt over time. So when we say, are they prepared to die? No one's really prepared for their loved ones to die with the grief aspect. Even if someone is, I know my loved ones died, and that moment it's, oh, someone died, then it's like, I can't believe they died, right? But that also has to be normalized. It's a normal and natural reaction to loss. It is a normal, natural reaction to loss. But didn't you know? Well, I think my grief is worse than your grief, because my grief my husband got hit by a car and your husband had stage 4 cancer for 8 years. So you were more prepared. You never prepared.
Right.
You never prepared until that moment. By the way, also with grief experience, judgment, analysis, criticism, the only thing that it could do is not only invalidate the other's experiences, but yours. Because someone else, what is it? If you have one finger pointing and 2 fingers are going to be pointing back at you. Okay. But I would say the Death Cafe is wonderful. Talk more about it. I actually took notes, Kathleen, on it, and I do want to. I just because it was deliciousness. Yeah.
While you're looking something up there, let me just make a comment about Death Cafes. So Death Cafes are a specific thing, Noel, for those listeners who don't know. They're specifically organized in a certain way, and there's certain things they're to encourage people to open up and speak. But it's kind of like, I've been to it many times when I lived in Austin, Texas, and it started in Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is, when you're speaking, you're not to be interrupted. People are just to be listening, and you can, and it at least, look, if there's thousands of these death cafes around the world now, and not everybody runs them the same way. But the traditional way, supposedly, is that you cannot be interrupted and you cannot offer any comments to the person even after they've spoken until you're in a break. So that's what I was told, and I've heard this from a number of people, the way that the death cafes are run. So it's not like it doesn't have a counseling kind of vibe or a grief recovery kind of counseling vibe. But it's open. It is so people can be non-judgmental and say however they want to say it through whatever their cultural or religious filter is or isn't, and they have a venue to speak and to share. That's the idea of the Death Cafe. Now, Sharon's also talking more generally about how we really need to talk about death more, just worldwide.
Yes, and I do want to share. And I can't take credit for this. This is Andrew Holsek, who's wonderful. I think he wrote something about dreaming and stuff like that. I'll get that title, but you can look him up. But the 3 relationships to death. Okay. And this is for, those people that kind of like, well, I think I'm prepared to die. I think I have done my work. I do my inner work. Okay. The lowest level of practitioners. No regrets. Who can say that? I have no regrets in this life. I have done everything I wanted to do. I've written that book. I've done that, whatever it is. I got that job. I married the girl I wanted to. No regrets. Okay. Medium level of practitioner. No fear. Fear of death. That's a big one. A lot of things, the accumulation of things in our life is the fear of death. But guess what? Those possessions, they're going to disintegrate, die too. This podcast, this is going to have a beginning, middle, ending, and it's going to end too. Everything has an ending. It has an expiration date. And then the highest level of practitioners, you look forward to it. Oh, no, I don't mean in a suicidal type of way. But you look forward to it because you change your dialogue and you reframe your dialogue with death. Death is not an ending. It's just a passage to another beginning. Okay. That's all I got. That's all I got.
I think that's a perfect ending as well.
And this too shall end.
So Kelvin,
and another speaker will begin next week.
Actually, we're having a speaker next month. She is a newly ordained interfaith minister, and
Nice.
she had such a traumatic COVID journey. She is going to be sharing about this subject in another way, but just about COVID and how that has impacted everything. So as I mentioned before, if you want to get our monthly, just send out something once a month with who our guests are for the coming month. If you want that, just put your email in the chat and we'll pick it up and include you in our mailing.
Should we say how do we get in touch with you, Sharon?
Yes, we want, yes, contact.
Contact. I can put my email in the chat. I guess that's what it's called here.
Maybe
And
publicly, why don't you give, because we're recording this now, Sharon, so why don't you say your Instagram name and spell it
oh,
out?
it's just Sharon Coyle-Saeed.
Exactly, so it's her name.
And here's the thing. I will even put my number in here if you need any help. What? People are gonna spam me. No, I've never had anyone. My number's out there. It's all out there. Texting is the best way to get in touch with me. Email's number too. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you, Kelvin, Kel, Sharon, everyone, the beautiful souls that showed up here tonight to hear this most fascinating message. You know, what you shared with us. I have to take a deep breath, because what you did was just such an intimate portrait of your journey and how you have turned that and how you are serving. And it just really touches me deeply. So I thank you both. I thank everyone for coming here tonight, and hopefully we'll see some of you in the future. And Sean, such a shame you end up in Hawaii.
You know, I tease him about that all the time.
Everybody's got to be somewhere, and Sean's in Hawaii.
Right. So good night, everyone.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much, Sharon.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone,
Awesome.
for your support.
This has been great.
bet.
I'm going to take us off of stop the live
Peace and
stream
blessings to
there.
all.